right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our August 4th school board meeting. Apologies for starting a little bit late. Another meeting run over. Call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item on the agenda is the board comments and committee updates. And I'll use this opportunity to speak to why we now have that on our agenda. In our recent retreat, we discussed some revisions to the agenda to one, try to provide more opportunity for public comment if possible. Having heard from some members of the public who expressed concerns of not being able to get to meetings in time to provide public comment. So one of the items we added was an additional removed rather the public comment period further down below discussion items. So hopefully anyone who has to work can get to the meeting in time for any public comment they'd like to make. We also added the board comments and committee updates so we could have an opportunity for committees to make their updates, as well as give board members an opportunity to just bring up any items they wanted to discuss or comments about something they're aware of in the community or something similar. So that's what that is about. Andrew, did you want to provide, or are there any committee updates, I should say?
Yes, yeah.
As it turns.
Yeah. Phil and Ty and I met last week for the policy meeting. During that, we kind of set the procedures that we'll have when it comes to those meetings. There is one policy in the packet that I'll probably discuss a little more when it's presented to the board, and then there were a few others that we wanted to make some edits to before we go to our first reading, and then we kind of set our goal as a policy meeting for how we want to go through and get in a more regular cycle of looking at policies and not necessarily being reactive but being more proactive. You want to add anything, Phil, or you feel that was adequate?
No, I think that was an accurate description of what we talked about. Right. But I do think that it's going to be fantastic for us to have some sort of rhythm moving forward, so that it's not like a glut of policies coming here, but ongoing. I think Todd's obviously taking a great. Oh, we elected Andrew chair.
Oh, congratulations!
It was a big.
That's good practice. For
contested.
A lot of campaigning that had to happen.
I should actually mention that Amy Tilton will not be joining us tonight. She's excused for the evening. We'll move on to the. Is there any, Dan, actually, I'm sorry, are there any budget committee updates?
No, our next meeting isn't until the end of this month.
Great, thank you very much. All right, now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Gary. Actually, I'm going to first just take a moment to just state that I'm wearing a mask tonight because I learned this afternoon I was in close contact with a person who was positive for COVID, and I'm simply following CDC guidance that I'm fully vaxxed and boosted, and I'm healthy, but just to make sure to protect everybody from that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because I typically am not wearing a mask at these meetings. So anyway, I did want to just talk about a handful of things that are really really positive things that have been going on in the district. First off, I want to just mention that I've been doing a series of meet and greet opportunities with the community. I've now had 4 of them, and each time we meet, there's probably 10 or 15 community members that come out, and it's just a great opportunity for me and the other members of the leadership team, Patty Wands, Andrew Corman, and actually the next one is at the elementary school on August 10th, and Sean Pine will be joining us. We've really found these to be a great opportunity to learn from people about their experiences in the Newmarket schools, and certainly when people have brought up issues, I've invited them to schedule time to come in and meet with me, and I've had a number of really good conversations with community members that have stemmed from that. So thank you to everybody who's coming out. like I say, August 10th at 3 o'clock. The elementary school is the last scheduled one for this summer, but we're already talking about rolling out some things in the fall to continue that theme of giving opportunity for community members to talk with school district leadership. So I'm real happy about that. A second thing I wanted to mention is I was contacted, actually invited by the Newmarket Town Council. They have formed a Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Commission that is going to be getting pulled together here in the fall. I met with Steve Fournier the other day to kind of just chat with him about the intentions of this committee. And really, it's a very proactive, forward-thinking group, and I have to commend the town of Newmarket for taking it on. It's set up that there are 7 members appointed by the town council, but then there are 4 sort of non-voting members that are invited, and the superintendent and/or a designee of the school district is one of the standing members of the group. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for a lot of these issues to get talked about. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I was very happy to be asked, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that. Next thing I wanted to mention is I spent today, the whole day today, with the leadership team. And when I say leadership team of the district, how I have defined the leadership team, it includes all of our principals, assistant principals, directors, department heads. There's 14 of us when we're fully gathered. And one of the things that we were able to do today, and we've met previously too, but today was the first time we had a full day to really go through things. And we have really been going through the various school initiatives, and I'm very excited at the work we're doing. We have another full day scheduled next week, where we're really starting to shape how we're going to use all the PD time that we now have with what I call the Wonderful Wednesdays that are built into our schedule, and also to just talk through some of the other logistical things to getting school opened. So anyway, we're really making great progress with that. One of the things we talked about today, and I will give you an actual written report for the August 18th meeting, but one of our big topics today was reentry planning. Clearly, in the past with managing COVID and the pandemic, there have been a number of challenges to having school open. My plan moving forward is to open school with as much normalcy as we possibly can. We talked about how we can do that while still balancing, protecting the health and safety well-being of our students and staff. Just to give you some indication, prior to these meetings, I've met with our school nurses, I've met with our unions. A lot of these conversations had happened in various ways prior to today, but we were able to kind of go through logistically how we were going to deal with things. And I'm very confident we're in a really good place to open things with what I would call very few restrictions, very normally. Big picture things to just kind of summarize key takeaways. We will be following CDC guidance, with regards to how we manage COVID. For those who don't know, current CDC guidance is if you are a positive case, they recommend 5 days of isolation. On the 6th day, you test, and if you're negative and/or you haven't had symptoms for 24 hours, you can return to activity with a mask. If you are a close contact, as I have just described to you that I am, what they recommend is if you're boosted and vaxxed, there's really, you're just monitoring symptoms. They recommend waiting until the 6th day and then testing just to be sure. But I'll wear a mask until I'm able to do that test. But those are the protocols that we will follow. And our nurses were really, I have to tell you, I haven't had an opportunity to work with Jen and Diane too much yet, but they are amazing. The conversations we had about how they had been managing things in the past and the recommendations they were making for how to move forward, I was really excited about. We're going to continue to offer testing for people who want it, but it doesn't necessarily have to interfere with the flow of school. We're going to be allowing normal capacities in all of our spaces, cafeterias, buses, and that kind of thing. But again, encouraging people to monitor and to be very aware of symptoms. And we will continue to monitor the data that is available. I do think it's important that people realize that the data that is now available is probably less accurate than it was in the past, because it's largely self-reported, case counts. But we will monitor that, and certainly if there's a reason to note a change in things, we'll talk about that. But right now, I'm really excited to be able to say I think we're going to be ready to open school in a normal way, with things like recess happening normally and all of those things. So didn't know if you guys had any questions about that or concerns before like I said, I will have a more detailed report for you next week, but I was very excited with the conversation we had today.
No, I think the questions I had was wait to the report. I'll probably be in there.
Yeah, good. Okay, super. So anyway, so that was one of the big topics we dealt with today. And last thing I wanted to say, and actually this is more of a community thank you. I believe it was Andrew who asked, hey, can we find a Newmarket place to have our school board retreat at and stay local? Because we had been shopping around. The Riverworks, a local restaurant that many of you know, Justin and Marcy, the new owners of it, they just bought it about 4 months ago. They have been wonderful. They actually, they obviously were the location for the school board retreat 2 weeks ago, but they also catered our leadership retreat today, and it was a wonderful lunch, and everybody really enjoyed it. And I just want to thank Justin and Marcy for doing that for us, because it really made for a nice opportunity for everybody. And that's all I have, but I'd be happy to answer any questions people might have.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have the Riverworks in town. Anything you'd like to discuss? Questions?
I don't have a question, but while we're on the topic of thanks, I did want to say to the Town Department of Public Works, South Main Street in front of the two schools is one of the nicest stretches of asphalt in the whole state. It has to be. So I really appreciate the great job they did with that, and the buses incoming aren't going to test the integrity of the fillings in anyone's teeth this year. Great job by the town on getting that done.
And I just want to add to it, during the retreat, it was mentioned that there has been meetings with teachers during the summer about where to move forward with the new administration. I just want to say how impressed with I am that teachers are coming in outside of their day during the summer to do that. It really shows their dedication.
Actually, thank you for saying that, because actually there's a group, we've been having a lot of conversation about the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school level program, and the enthusiastic response we've got. There's a whole bunch of 6th, 7th, 8th grade teachers coming in to do some planning work around how we can create a more middle school appropriate environment for our 10 through 13-year-olds, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah. And that is out of their contract.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
so awesome.
All right. Next, we have a presentation of the Newmarket Safety Manual. First reading by Jana.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us here. I'm presenting this tonight, but I'm presenting it on behalf of the Joint Loss Management Committee, of which I'm a member. We met for, I think, 5 or 6 times last spring as a group to review the safety and health program document that's in front of you. This document has its basis in Department of Labor requirements, so we are required to have this. We did really a deep dive into it, some great conversations, great feedback. We also involved our Primex liaison, which is our insurance company. So we had an agent from Primex actually join our meetings, 2 or 3 of our meetings, to review, to make sure that we were meeting the requirements that the state has put out, and she offered some great feedback. She actually came and did a site visit of one of the sites where we had somebody had an injury, to look at that with us while she was out here. So it's a pretty robust committee. Part of what we do every time we meet is we review accident reports with all names and identifiable information removed from it, but we look at it as a team of both administrators and employees together to come up with ideas of ways we can prevent or minimize time lost in the workplace and make it a safe and healthy environment for everybody. So Really important mission, some very dedicated folks that worked really hard on this. The document is up for those of you at home in our materials for our board meeting. It's quite a long document, but just to kind of give you a sense, there's a basic framework that's provided as a template kind of from the Department of Labor, and then you fill in your school specific pieces to that. So we have gone through, and we believe that this is, the administrative team reviewed this today, had, felt that this was something that lines up with what we're going to be able to do. And so we're just looking for the board to take a look at it. It should be reviewed biennially. And so we're looking for you to take a look at it and ask, review it, ask any questions. If there's anything in there that you would like to see differently, we can certainly look at that. But the goal, the hope is that we can adopt this going into the next school year so that we have this as a resource for our staff. And as our committee continues to meet, we can enhance it and review it as we go.
Go ahead. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Real quick, sorry. So I appreciate this being in the packet and how robust it is. I know there's sections on it on training, I'm thinking of training. What about actually training on this, right? There's training on content that this mentions, but training just on the whole policy. Is there a plan for how we'll operationalize it and ensure people understand it?
Well, actually, we have planned as part of our our full staff day on the 24th. I've spoken with Ms. Wands, who's organizing the agenda. So we're going to actually be doing kind of a nuts and bolts presentation. My business office team, one of the items that we're going to address is this, to let them know where it is. We now have it's on our website under our for staff area. There's just right now a blank hole where this will go, but once approved, it will go up there. But we do have all of the minutes of our joint loss management meetings up there. We have a first report of injury up there. So we really do want to, inform staff about where to find this and the importance of that, and of course emphasize the need to file a first injury report within 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause so things like this, right? I think a lot of good, in any type of organization, great intention and hard work goes into something that sometimes gathers real dust on a bookshelf or digital dust in a computer, and people don't. So it's awesome that it's gonna be socialized and people understand them.
Yep, it's going to be one of the areas that we address as part of kind of our operational nuts and bolts onboarding this.
Great.
This
Thank
fall.
you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I'm sorry, no, go ahead. More just for my education than anything else. How does the school district, I work in transportation, so it's very regimented for us how we track lost time injuries, near miss, leading indicators like near miss. Does the school district have a framework for tracking those things?
Absolutely. As part of our insurance platform, when we get a first injury report, we actually file it on this platform. So we have great archival data. As I said, when we meet as a committee, we actually can review the accident reports, the details, where they happened. We can go and look and address them. But yes, we do track them. They assign a preliminary cost to almost every incident, but most of those don't come to fruition. We tell everybody, if you have injured yourself in any way, just file the report. There's no harm in doing that. There's no penalty for filing a bunch of reports, but we certainly don't want somebody to fall down and say, no, I'm fine, I'm not going to file, and get home and realize they've got an injury that requires some attention. So yeah, but it's all tracked and archived, and we can run reports on it different ways to look at the injury reports and what trends we might see, and that's part of what the work that this committee does.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I have a history question and a procedure question. The first question is the history question. Has this committee existed for a long time, or has this been relatively new due to legislation?
This committee, the law goes back a long time. So it's a state requirement under the Department of Labor that there be a joint loss management committee in any organization, I believe, with more than 50 employees. So it's a requirement. There was a committee. COVID kind of interrupted a lot of our abilities to get together as groups. And so what we've kind of done is we've really revamped, got some new members in, and restarted again fresh this spring to kind of review this. We did have a plan in place, but we have significantly kind of modified it and brought it up to date. And also, there was some new legislature that was introduced. There's an entirely new section in here that 2 years ago didn't exist. It pertains to student violence prevention and management. So even in the best of circumstances, the law can change, and you have to do these, update and address the different things. So that's one of the things that we spent a lot of time on, because that was brand new, a brand new section that we needed to do.
Okay. I saw the committee members. I saw there was a junior and senior high school teacher on here.
Mm-hmm.
Did the elementary school have the opportunity to have input on this at all? Okay.
We did. Actually, some of the staff members that are listed, the nurses, NES nurse is there. Our tutor was from the elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we did put it out there, and we did ask for volunteers. And so the way the committee has to be made is you have to have fewer members of administration than you do employees.
Okay.
So you can add as many as you want, but you have to make sure that ratio stays the way that it needs to.
Thank you. And then my procedure question. I keep apologize here.
That's okay.
So my biggest concern is with as much with COVID and all that's happened, and with as much change that we have in administration, is that a lot of like the safety items in here that they were never perhaps taught to the new staff, and that there is not communication is happening amongst administration and the town about that. And I was just wondering if that is happening, and if there's any way for the board to be just told that that's happening. And my thought is just like what's happened last year, and it seemed like a lot of like what's happening on those reports, it just seemed like those communications things never happen. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware, and then our job as a board is covered as well. And I don't know if it's just me feeling that way, but I just want to voice that. So.
Well, what I would say is clearly adopting this officially is critical to raising awareness of things. But one of the things that Janet talked about with the leadership team today is it does boil down to some fairly simple internal education around reporting and tracking, because the value of this Joint Loss Management Committee is the data that they collect, and to be able to figure out like what are the hazards that we need to do better at, and the quality of the data you get is really important, and making sure everybody in the organization understands what's required, and that every accident, every injury that they have is reported, and that can be then analyzed. So I think that's where I think we have some work to do, and that's where I think the training on the 24th will raise that bar. But I think it's an ongoing thing to get people to regularly recognize that when an accident occurs, there's a process they're supposed to follow, so that we all know that it occurred, and hopefully can work to prevent it in the future.
And this is just the first reading, so certainly people can go through it. We can discuss it more next meeting, as well as have a third reading if necessary, if there's any changes that are being considered. Thank you, Jana, and thank you to the Newmarket Joint Loss Management Committee.
I'm just one member.
Thanks, Jana.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to discussion items. First item is our second reading of the policy revision DAF.
Really a third reading.
Well,
Yeah, second reading, I like to call
yeah,
it.
second reading, yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Third reading of the Administration of Federal Grants policy.
So as Phil mentioned, this is the second reading. It just this is the one we looked at beginning of the summer, is June, I believe. The only difference is this is cleaned up a little bit more, so it's more legible. This deals with the federal grants and then with the audit recommended that we do.
Great. Thank you very much.
Everything in here is required, and just to emphasize, it's already being done, but it is all required.
One thing I did want to mention about that, although policy is typically a board responsibility for you to craft, in this particular case, we had to adopt this policy pretty much as written. There was very little leeway in adopting it because the federal requirements under 2 CFR 200, which govern all federal awards, are very stringent. So having the policy is one piece, but you also have to have internal procedures to accompany those, and we have worked really hard this year to build those procedures as well. So I'll give you a little snippet, I hope next week, to give you more information about our recently completed audit, but we had our single audits already done, and they told us that they could not find anything to cite in the audit, which is really pretty incredible given the magnitude of adopting this in 1 year. So kudos to that team upstairs I keep talking to about, but they did
Which
a
you
great
are
job.
a vital part of.
Yeah. So, so that it is important, and we already have built these procedures. We have someone in the office that's designated for compliance to make sure all these things are happening. So it's not just a paper document. We're really living it and making sure it's happening. So.
It's fantastic to hear. Thank you very much to you and all those folks up in the finance office. So normally I would ask if we could amend the agenda to move up the vote. However, given the new format and leaving time for public comment, I'm going to refrain from that, and we'll just follow the normal process. So if there's any members of the public who want to rush down here and talk about policy DAF, the administration of federal grant funds, please do so. Next discussion items are school board goals. So we had a great retreat and discussed the goals as the board knows. Todd, did you want to go into this?
Yeah, so
thanks.
just refresh your memories. We had a kind of a brainstorming session around board goals. It's in a memo in your packet. There were 4 broad goals that you sort of put up there, again, emphasizing this is purely draft. It was just to kind of give us a starting point for discussion. But looking at district leadership, specifically around the status of the current superintendent and what your future plans are for this role. Second goal or potential goal was to do a review of our legal counsel and to begin to take a look at it and develop a legal strategy. Just historical record, for the most part, we hire lawyers as we need them, but we haven't necessarily had a specific firm that's represented us, and is that something we want to consider? Third goal that we talked about was the developing of a vision of a graduate, which is a great opportunity for community dialogue. And would that be something you'd want to tie into a board goal to kind of look at how we can get feedback from our community to determine what they want from their schools? And certainly there's a great opportunity there. And then the last one really ties into a couple of things that Gary has been talking about with regards to agenda, but board practices as a general thing. We talked about how can we make board meetings run more efficiently and be more accessible to the public, all of those things. So those were the 4 draft goals that were generated at the retreat. So obviously you guys can talk about that.
So does anyone have any change of thoughts of changing the goals? Anything we'd like to amend, add to?
So one amendment just to specific, I think the goals are fantastic. With the school district vision of a graduate, the vision of a graduate includes this in the middle, a vision statement that defines the transferable skills the school system wants all graduates of Newmarket to have acquired. Do you want to say the school system or do you want to say the community?
Great point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Outside of that, I think my questions are more about how do we plan to operationalize these? Like, what actually we're going to do to hold ourselves accountable? What metrics are we going to put into place and whatnot? Which I don't think we have an answer for now, but we should need a plan to how we're going to plan to execute these.
Yep, 100%. And even with kind of best practices, and we talked about scheduling formats and accessibility, we should think about whether we want to have some sort of forums or something so that people can actually come up and have more of a dialogue with us than we are allowed to do in a board meeting format.
Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
Well, I guess it would be technically a meeting, but we could have a forum sort of format where we could have a question answer sort of session where we have more. We're able to have more reaction and dialogue with members of the community or the teachers or whoever. Whereas when we sit up here, because of the way meetings tend to run, we get questions or comments given to us, but we can't necessarily respond.
So yeah, so like you're diving into like something we could do under board practices.
Sure.
I think personally, I think that we are going to need to think chunk up a level and be
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
how are we going to go about taking board practices and like, what is our goal in board practices? Then what activities are we going to engage in to move us to a place where we have
Sure.
systems where we're doing something like that, right? Like creating greater opportunities for the community to have a voice and have dialogue with us, right?
No, you're absolutely right.
And like some of the things I think is really partnering with the administration, right? Like the school district vision of a graduate, I think the administration is probably going to like have a timeline that they're going to be doing that, and other things I think we're probably going to take a much more direct role in, such as district leadership, where like the buck sort of stops with us on that.
Absolutely. And as it turns out, we have an agenda item to have an initial discussion on that.
So do you think breaking down each one of these into like this is gonna be evidence period, like number 1, number 2?
Yeah, like I guess for me, it's first of all like, how do we want to approach it?
Yeah.
Are we gonna have full board dialogues? Are we gonna like create like a subcommittee of the board to be like, hey, you 3 or you 2 go like come up with a plan for this that will come to the whole board for each of the goals, and then we can mesh it together on a calendar and look at, okay, how can we execute against these goals and how are we holding ourselves accountable to it? I'm just looking for, again, much like the policy we just got briefed on here, that how do we take it from words into action? How do we operationalize it?
Yeah, it's a great point.
Because we could talk the 5 of us up here all for a year and be like, no, what do we do on that thing again?
Exactly. When we regroup on that, hopefully when we have a full board
Yep,
present
totally
at the
agree. Amy
next
should be
meeting,
good.
and we should figure out how we'd like to proceed on that.
If I could just throw out one thought, because it's something that we as the leadership team was working on this afternoon, and this is mostly focused on curricular related topics, but what we were thinking chronologically, okay, where do we want to be in June, and just sort of mapped out, okay, what needs to happen in September, October, what needs to happen, but that kind of thing, so you can actually check in periodically and say, are we there yet? And if you're not, you can, it's an opportunity to say, oh, well, what's holding us back? Maybe there's a legitimate reason. But it gives you something to look at and check in with regularly. So it's a simple tool, but just a
Backwards
chronological-
planning, milestones, like really, like, yeah, totally.
Roadmap, sure. Any other thoughts on the retreat, the goals this time? No?
I really appreciated the dialogue at the retreat that got us here between the board and the administration.
Yeah, I did too. It was really nice to just kind of have some, not frank dialogue, because I think we have frank dialogue here, but just to dive deeper on some items that we broached here at high level and have an opportunity to discuss them in more detail.
Yeah, the activities that, were set up by the administration worked really well to get everybody, to really prompt and promote the discussion.
Yeah, Todd, thank you and the leadership team again. I know we've thanked you the meeting, but it went very well. It's definitely the best retreat I've been to in my long 3 years.
Okay.
2 years and 3 days.
And
or
it
on
was
the
the
board.
best retreat I've ever organized for a school board.
Newmarket.
Okay, so first one.
Nice. Great. Next item that we added to the agenda was a public correspondence section. Again, hearing from the community, we realized we needed to provide more feedback on the communication we get. We discussed various ways to do that, including reading every letter received, and we realized that might not be very practical. And certainly we'd encourage people to come down in person to make comments if they'd like to. But we agreed we'd summarize communications we received as a board, as well as communications that either Todd received specifically addressed to the board, or I received directly, or certainly if you folks receive any directly, you can share it during this time. So I did want to bring up 3 correspondence that we've received between then and now. One parent who's going to have a youngster joining the elementary school in the fall, had gone down and toured the elementary school playground and some of the trails, and had some concern over the access to the playground during the school day. So I responded to them, shared the concern that safety obviously is a primary concern, and contacted Principal Pine and Superintendent Allen, who responded to them with more specifics on safety precautions that are taken, and as well as any kind of review they've done on that. there was another group of parents who wrote a letter encouraging that there be more playtime, or excuse me, outdoor activities in the school year. Certainly there wasn't a lot last year, the year before, and that was elementary school all the way up through high school, right? There's plenty of times you can have outdoor classrooms or use some of the environments around the campus as learning opportunities. The other one that I received, if I can read my own writing, which I can't very well, is just a notification that the land across the street from the elementary school exit onto Main Street is put up for sale. It's 7.5 acres, and they just wanted us to be aware of it in case the board had reason to purchase additional properties for future school projects, presumably. So, not aware of any need at this time.
Which
Nor
properties?
necessarily the funding. If you leave the elementary school onto Route 10, excuse me,
South Main?
on South Main Street, thank you. Directly across is a small cape with a
Yep.
pretty good sized field, and
Yep.
usually about 4 deer sitting in the back,
Yep.
walking around grazing. Yeah, that one. As well as a little apple tree out front. But no picket fence. So I just thank them, and I just wanted to pass that along. I don't know what it would cost, nor the money would be there, nor what we would use it for, but I appreciate being notified, so.
Can I just reiterate with this new addition to the agenda, with meaning that staff and like teachers should follow the normal line of communication with principals and superintendent and their union, and not to the board. So
Sure, certainly if there's something specific to their role in the school, that would make sense. If it's just a overall non-role specific, that it may be appropriate as a community member to,
yes. Yeah.
I guess when in doubt, ask your immediate leader, and they can
Yes.
give you the best way to handle your
And
concerns.
we answer questions like that from staff all the time about how best to pursue things. Certainly, if they are operating as a citizen communicating to the board, their rights as a citizen do not go away because they're an employee. But obviously, if they're talking from a perspective of an employee, it should go through the appropriate chains of command.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for bringing that up, pointing that out. The next item, number 4, is a preliminary discussion of the superintendent timeline. Basically, as everyone knows, Todd is an interim superintendent. We need to determine we need to pursue finding a permanent superintendent, whether that be at the interim, whether that be an outside search, whether we do both, whatever. We need to discuss how we want to do that. That being said, there are certain, I think, milestones we need to consider. Generally, if you're going to start a superintendent search, you want to do it by October, November, kind of at the outside, maybe November at the very outside. And I think if you're going to look to beg your interim superintendent to stay, you probably want them to have at least the opportunity to have the school open and have teachers in session and really get a feel for what that is, as well as for their own sake, as well as for us to be able to see how they work in that capacity. So that being said, we probably should regroup with this discussion sometime in early September and more formally discuss it. We can certainly do that now if people want to. Amy's not here, so we wouldn't obviously make a final decision. Any thoughts on that?
So this literally is like what I was talking about in the goals section. Like, this is operationalizing goal 1. Like, what milestones do we want to put into place to sort of projectize goal 1?
I heard you, and I remembered.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, we could have a conversation as to what those milestones look like. We could sort of, in a packet as a pre-read, like get a sort of draft timeline of what the milestones are, so we could talk around that. I think we totally transparent, right? Milestone could be like, do we want to try to stay the course and continue enter the super? Do we want to go to the open market? Do we want to do we want to do something weird that we haven't even thought about, right? Are there things? I think that getting that on paper to have a discussion around would be a helpful way for us to like at least know, okay, here are the points in time where we're going to have to like make a decision, so we
Sure.
don't get
So,
either
yeah,
analysis paralysis
yeah,
and all of a sudden one meeting be like, we got to make a decision.
I could say November 15th, we should have a decision whether or not we're going.
So like, where are the waypoints, right? Like,
So
what
then-
are the, like,
so then
is it
prior to
October
that-
1st that we're having a conversation
So
about,
that's what we
right?
need to, yeah, so
I
that's
think
what
we just need to map it out.
So when do we want to start having that conversation? So, go ahead, Andrew, sorry.
Personally, I think before we enter the discussion, I personally would like to know the process or the policy, and I don't know if that's something that we could find on the New Hampshire School Board Association website, or if I assume they've gone through this enough time that they're able to give kind of a process, so at least I can go in more of an educated into the discussion,
I don't know if there'll be a process, but we can certainly ask them for recommendations on timelines and
Yeah.
way to vet different avenues.
If you'd like, I can reach out to Barrett, Christina, and just say, what's your ideal timeline if you're conducting just a normal search, and give you that sort of time span to think about. And then obviously the Newmarket specific conversations you guys need to have, and locally you could have in addition to that.
Or just even to like just say like these are the things you need to do. Like, you need to first create a committee, and then we need to have questions, and then we that type of broken down. So like,
And it depends on what avenue you're choosing, right? So
Yeah.
certainly for a full superintendent search, that would be kind of the appropriate steps, more or less. We can find out specifics. If you're deciding to keep an interim superintendent on, you could decide just to vote and do it. You could decide to do a full interview process with them, include them in an external process. You could have a 360 review around them. I mean,
Can I posit something? Feels like we have like several potential courses of action that we could take. That it would be great to be like, course of action 1, like open market, full on search. Course of action 2, like conversation with interim about like potential of moving to full time. Like, should he be so inclined? Or like 2 days in, he's like, I'm done with this. It's like, all y'all is crazy.
He had a great first 3 weeks, so I don't know. So he did really well his first 3 weeks. So.
Or like some hybrid of the 2, course of action 3, where it's like open market but invite and encourage current. Like, I don't know, right? Like course of action 4, something, who knows? But knowing what the potential course of actions are, so that we as a board can then be like, okay, what are the milestones where we trigger? If we want to go to course of action 2, we got to do these things now. Right? Like,
And I
would be
think
helpful to see in like a map.
And I think the course of actions are somewhat dependent on what we decide they are. So we could start preliminarily drafting potentials. I could present some potential courses of action. We could expand on that.
Yeah. Like, the thing that's holding me up is, I think, what path we're going to do is what's going to happen in the next month and a half with what Todd feels like he wants to do, because there's a difference between if we do a full search committee with a outside source, that's a lot of money, and something that I personally rather avoid. But if Todd decides I don't want to do this at all, that, it might be what we have to do. But if so, I think for me, I would like to hold off as long as possible to make the decision, but to see how the first few months go. But at the same time, we can't, but without knowing what my options are, I can't say this is when we have to make the decision. Does that make
You
sense?
just have to
It
know.
does, so-
You have to know where your drop dead points are, where you've slammed the door on option
Yeah.
2 and 6 out of 1 through 8, and make sure that. I mean, we may run past them, but we'll do it with our eyes open instead of realizing after the fact, oh crap, we foreclosed 2 of our 8 options.
So why don't we do this? We can get the New Hampshire School Board Association to give us an idea of the best time to start generally, or a common time to start. I guess maybe
For a
is better-
full-on search.
For a full-on search. I can draft up some potential avenues that we can all look at and discuss, and then I can work with Todd to kind of make some educated guesses about, when you want to, if you're going to do option 1, option 2, option 3, when you might need to do that sort of thing.
I mean, we can call them educated guesses, but eventually it's going to turn into I think what needs to be our this date by this date a decision has to be made.
Oh, we need to, absolutely, but
Yeah.
we need to get something down
Yeah.
to discuss. So.
Sooner rather than later, I think we should be looking at timelines for this.
It
Out of
won't be-
all
it
of
won't
these,
be
the most
tonight,
time.
but I'll
Well, yeah,
certainly
I know.
But I'll
but I
work
think
on
like
it.
if we're looking at our
Yeah.
goals and trying to
Yeah.
prioritize, like this is one that I feel like we don't really have a lot of time
Yeah,
to get to a
absolutely.
place where we're making a decision as to which course we
Yeah.
want to take.
Yep, absolutely.
And just to throw, this is just an idea, and please, you're with the education background, but throwing this, Newmarket has a lot of teachers and administrators, and I think that's largely because it used to be the only place where they could afford to buy a house. And I know a lot of them have gone through superintendent searches. That might be an idea to throw out. Say, hey, will you mind coming and sharing your experience going through a district with a superintendent search recently? I don't know if that has any credence, but there is a resource there. So
Yeah.
There's a resource there, and also, given the amount of community involvement, I'm sure we're going to want to have in the decision making. Just like we don't want to foreclose our own options by waiting too long, we don't want to wait too long to make people aware that this is something we're thinking about, so that people feel like that again, the option I preferred was off the table before the school board even asked me what I thought about it.
Yeah, 100. I think we need like whatever the options are as a whole. The community should have an opportunity to like have a voice in that,
For sure.
or else we're gonna
Yeah,
like.
I completely agree.
I gotta say though, I find it very awkward discussing this when you're saying right
Yeah,
next to
and
me.
Yeah.
Oh, is he?
I was a little bit like, do we go to non-public? But it's nothing we're talking about. Like we're just talking about general like strategies now. We start getting into specifics then.
And I'm a hard person to embarrass, so
Okay.
just keep talking over me.
Which is why he's wearing a mask too.
Yes.
It's very
You can't
red.
even- You can't even tell. No, but I mean, there's one of the avenues could be having some kind of community involvement around how their experience and teacher involvement, their experience was an interim assessment. It could just be the board saying we're making the decision. It could be some sort of So yeah, I'll start drafting something and work with Todd when he's not feeling so awkward
But I will be happy to reach out to Barrett and Christina
Yeah,
and
thank
ask
you.
him to just map out a timeline. I'm sure he has something he can readily give to us,
I'm
because
sure.
they do this all the time.
Yep.
The other thing that he can probably also do is to give you a flavor of the current status of superintendent searches and the challenges that you will
I
face.
mean, there's probably a lot of
Success
them going on in the
ratio,
state right
yeah.
now. There's massive turnover.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is basically, Todd had been reviewing some of the vacation processes within the district for the administration, I should say, within the SAU, and wasn't entirely clear on how to handle kind of notification or getting sign off or confirmation that you're taking days, or I guess having a second person verify or whatever the term is, sign off on it. So he spoke with me about it. We spoke about possibly having the chair do it. It didn't really seem to make sense. We kind of agreed that it made sense to have the second in command, so to speak, person do it, which would be Patty Wands. So he was going ahead, or he recommended, and I agree that we just they revise their policy just to have, if he's going to be away, that Patty signs off on it, as well as a courtesy. He'll certainly let the chair know, who can let the remainder of the board know that would be out of town.
Why is it awkward for the chair? I understand why it's awkward for the chair to
It's not
track it. The chair shouldn't be tracking that
It's
stuff.
not
but
awkward per se, but it's not a chair or board responsibility exactly. We hire them, but we don't necessarily track anything as far as
it seems like a supervisor responsibility, and
Well,
ostensibly we are the supervisor of the superintendent.
we
As a
are
body.
right. Like, we don't administer any kind of the HR processes that he would follow. We don't check his time cards, his vacation time,
Yeah.
something like that. So that's where it's a little.
One piece you left,
Unclear.
one thing you left out of the process was once it's been approved by Patty Wands, I then inform the board, so it's an internal check, but then you're still notified before it happens. And oh, by the way, I'm taking Monday off. Just wanted to.
As Patty said so.
She did a sign. She signed off this afternoon.
I mean, it sounds directionally right to me. There are many things at work that I'm ultimately accountable for that I don't manage day to day.
Yeah.
And that feels like, I hope, the kind of split of responsibilities we're going. Yes, we're accountable ultimately for the superintendent, but that doesn't mean that we're going to track day to day everything
That we're responsible for me,
yeah.
monitoring his team. Yeah, you said it much more articulately than I did. Thank you.
Well, that's what they pay.
And I
me
also
for,
don't want to,
so.
I mean, I certainly can come down and sign it anytime he needs me to, but it just didn't strike as the right kind of process, so.
So what, can I just throw it, I'm sorry, I don't want to drag this out. So, total devil's advocate scenario. The superintendent, the superintendent, like puts in for something, like for vacation on a day, and Patty's like, fine by me, but like the chair's just like, oh, there was this thing that we were going to do that day, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we can't do it because they're on vacation, and that would have, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe that's just a total left field scenario that will never happen.
I think it kind of is, and it's not like the chair certainly has no authority to say when someone can or can't take time off. What the board does as a whole, I guess that could be argued. I think they're
I
professionals.
do not foresee this happening. Like,
Yeah.
like honestly, the
Yeah.
remedy for that is just strong communication between the chair and the board and the administration. But
Yeah.
all right.
I mean, I feel strongly that the board has a right to know when I'm
Yeah.
not working, so that I think it's important that you know it.
Because then some community members just like, hey, where's the superintendent? Like, I don't know.
And I think
Yeah,
I also have
exactly.
an obligation to make sure when I'm taking time that there's somebody in the office that can answer questions if that comes
Yeah.
up. So, so Jana and I and Patty and everybody, we talk these things through to make sure there's always somebody there.
Okay, cool.
All right. Awesome. Great. Thank you
Do we
very
have
much.
to, we can't vote until after public comment.
We can't, and it's a non-voting item anyways, but certainly vote on it if you'd like. So now we'd like to open the floor at 7:02 for public comment. And seeing no members of the public here, nor hearing pitter-patter down the hallway, at 7:02 we will close the floor for public comment. Next we have some action items to approve. First would be seek a, I haven't done this for a few weeks, seek a motion to approve the policy DAF administration, go ahead, administration of federal grants funds.
I'll make the motion. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Andrew, thank you very
It's
much.
your subcommittee. I want to make sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My power.
Don't let it go to your head.
Going to my head, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to accept the policy changes to DAF. In a second, do we have any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, passes 4-0. Seek a motion to approve the July 7th, 2022 public and non-public sealed minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor in a second. To approve the minutes. Is there any discussion?
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Manifests, would you like to do the
Sure.
Honors?
Move
Thank
that we
you.
approve the manifest, the amount of $1,101,685.91.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the manifest. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have some fall coaching nominations. As Superintendent Allen's going to tell us, we're still working on finalizing the some of the specifics of the coaching
The stipends.
stipends.
Yeah, the
but,
committee that was authorized by the teacher's contract as a subcommittee to review those stipends. We are in the process of doing that. We are not ready to make any recommendations, so obviously these people are subject to the structure that's currently in place.
Great, thank you very much.
And I would point out, just as a note, when you gave me the authority back in June to approve contracts, and so one of these is a new coach, Ken Najam, who is the new boys varsity soccer coach. So in lieu of there being a board process, I had him come in. I interviewed with him, with Jamie Hayes. He's an exceptionally good coach, dedicated, and an active member of the community rec, soccer, and so forth. I think he's going to be a great coach. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you very much.
Are these essentially all the teams that we're fielding for fall sports?
Yes. Well, not exactly. There are kids who play football, but their coaches are
Oh,
over in that.
okay.
Things.
Didn't we
And
have a
there might
golf
be-
team at some point?
Golf, but field. Some kids go to field hockey.
Yeah, there are some collaborative arrangements
Okay.
with others. I'm gonna. This is gonna show my ignorance, but
Yeah,
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 there are
that-
kids playing in other towns. Yeah.
I was just curious. It looks like looks like we've got the varsity teams covered. Some of the junior varsity teams. Do we not have enough interest for players, or?
That's I can't give you that answer for every program. I mean, certainly numbers do make a difference. Like I know when I was talking with Jamie about the boys program, there's enough for really one team. So numbers wise, there isn't enough to warrant it. The other thing is there's a few programs, and I apologize for not being able to give you specifics, but there are a couple they're still looking for coaches, and those will come back later.
Okay.
Some varsity positions are they're just like everything are hard to come by, so we're trying to make sure to get the right people.
Do we know what we're looking for?
I can tell you that at the next.
I was just trying to get it on camera so people.
No, unfortunately, I don't.
Probably I'm trying to think of the numbers last year in 8th grade, kids that moved up, so I would not be surprised if there was a JV nomination coming at some point.
Yeah.
JV soccer.
It wouldn't surprise me.
But basically, the only sports here, soccer and cross country, are the only options that I see, and
Yep.
football with that being.
Yep.
Don't know the numbers in 7th going to 8th grade, so I don't know about junior high. But right,
Do we have to vote on these?
we do. So I'd seek a motion to approve the coaching nominations presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's 4-0. Last action item we have is some new hires and some resignations.
Well, we had two new hires, and again, we already offered contracts to Jennifer Gulkasian, who will be our new library media specialist at the elementary school. Just an exceptionally energetic person. Really enjoyed meeting her. Even before she came into the interview, she'd already begun to have conversations with Rebecca Cole at the high school about what the programs or needs were, so she's exceptional. And Danielle Jubinville for the speech language position, that's the position that was vacated when we promoted Jean Civiello to assistant principal. To be very honest, we were not sure we were going to be able to find somebody for that position, and by luck of the draw, Keisha, assistant principal at the high school, had a connection, and she reached out to a friend of hers and said, "Hey, have you ever thought of coming to work at Newmarket?" And the next thing you know, we had an exceptional candidate in front of us, so we were able to get Danielle. So those are the two new staff that have already been offered contracts, accepted them, and they've already been processed. And then the resignation is a case manager at the high school, Stacy Partridge. She actually resigned to take an administrative function at I forget which school she told me she was going to. I think it was Raymond, or anyway, but she's taken another it's a promotion is what I'm trying to get at. So we are in the process of trying to find a new case manager there.
So I'd seek a motion to accept the new hires and resignations as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Before we go into non-public, just wanted to briefly discuss, since I don't think we're returning on camera, briefly discuss our next meeting or meetings. Andrew, you texted me about an upcoming date when we weren't sure. Since we're going first and third Thursdays, you had a question on.
Just so you know, the reason was there's a concert I want to go to.
That
Second,
is quite
so I want you to know this came out of the blue. That's the reason why.
It depends on who it is.
Is it an adult concert or a child concert? Right?
No, so okay, so we said first and third, but of course there's some months that have 5 Thursdays. So that means that we would do like the first, third, and the 5th, and skip the first and go to the second of the next month. Does that make sense? Is with me so far?
Or we'd have 2 in a row, 2, yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so my question is, like, is it always the first and the third for my planning purposes? Or is it,
Your
would we-
hypothetical 5th Thursday planning
but
purposes.
it runs in, but actually it happens very early in the year. I think in October, right away, we have one with 5 Thursdays.
I think it would probably largely depend on how urgent the superintendent and the business managers items were that we would need to discuss.
mean,
If it's
we
that
can-
early.
This is about an extra meeting, or is it, because
That's what I mean, is like, would we?
Well,
would
is it an extra meeting?
Well, is
If
it-
we
is
do
it-
the first and third, and there's a
If
fifth
there's a fifth, we
Thursday.
just don't do a
just
meeting.
don't
That's what I mean, so we would
Okay.
go technically like
Yeah.
3 weeks without a meeting,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to, thank you, I can now buy these tickets.
I do want to mention the one
Talking floor
thing,
seats or
just
balcony?
because I
Oh,
brought it
no,
up.
we're-
On the theory of first and third Thursdays, the March meeting is during the spring vacation week. And I
We should
think
move that one.
And probably should consider moving it.
The
so-
2nd of March.
Right.
We can move
will
one's
be
one
away.
off.
Yeah.
Trying to think, the 2nd of March, is that right after the election? Or before
Right before the election.
I just know, like, when I saw it, I thought it fell into the whole thing about starting processes. And I know in the past, it was like a quick change, usually, like, with very little notice when things like that happen. I just thought we should avoid that, so.
I mean, I think certainly there are going to be times where we have to make quick changes, like if we
Yeah.
find out there's something that needs to be discussed, or if we find out someone has concert tickets and
Oh,
can't
yeah.
go to a meeting, we can always move
Well, I
things
just-
as necessary.
it was on the 2nd, but if it was, that's why. But so always first and third. Okay.
All right, so,
Can
all
I-
right,
One more thing before we
Yeah.
go, just because like I know the packet's online for public too. Just we used to get like section breaks in the packet. Like it would be fantastic if there was just a cover page, because as I was trying to read it on like the packet that we got like in the email, I was like, oh wait a minute, we're changing subjects here. Like it was very like
So you like those pages?
it'd be helpful to have something so that
do they
also
have
for
to be
quick
orange?
reference. It could be whatever, right? Like it could be like a bunch. Like this is much harder, right? But separate documents for each one in like a zip folder, which each one has, but some way to like easily, quickly reference. Like, okay, I'm going to the next section now.
Okay.
But
Maybe we
I
just do
know.
a blank page or the subject, because the orange, we're printing that out, and that's just a waste, and the zip file, I don't know. if
Yeah,
it'll
it doesn't
work
have to be
with the
orange. Just
format.
something that just
Yeah.
shows a break
With the
between the
online
two.
format, so.
Easy enough done.
And this is down the line, but I would prefer to get like a school computer that we just get these digitally, so they're not printed off, so we can save
I agree.
paper
Totally agree.
and petty time.
And I actually would say one of the reasons Patty was the driver behind removing those pages, because she's very environmentally conscious and wants to not waste paper. And so certainly one of the things she has mentioned to me many times is, hey, would the board like to use technology and actually have a computer and use that?
I would love to not have all this paper.
We could certainly look at something like that. I'll talk to Jason Carey about how we can make that happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to buy anything special, but if we have old Chromebooks or something that.
My understanding is we have piles of old Chromebooks.
do
An
it.
iPad right there is
Give us
doing
some
it perfectly well.
antiquated technology.
Yeah. If you do add a section, can you just put this page as intentionally blank?
Yep.
I always enjoy seeing that on documents. No, I was being facetious.
No, I'm going
Please
to add
don't
it, because
then you can't reuse the sheet of paper.
I want the world to know.
Then you can't reuse the sheet of paper. Like
You
Gary,
guys want
Gary
all
wasted
All
that.
caps, please, Calibri.
Gary intentionally wasted each document. We do. We have an item to discuss under RSA A32A and E.
I move we go into non-public session under our RSA 91A32, subparagraph A and E.
I'll second.
Motion, second to go to non-public. Janet, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Have a good night.
Good night.